Hey there, hey, it is Michelle with Brilliant Quest, and I want to ask you a question. Are you good at finding everything but the answer? If you are, stick with me because we're going to be talking about how to become a pro at problem solving. All right, so I'm going to just give this to you as quickly as I can because if you get this, then you're going to accelerate exponentially at being able to clear out a lot of the things that cause psychic weight on our minds of how to provide our own selves with answers. And this works not only with solving problems for others, but especially with solving problems for ourselves. And this came out of me having to do it as a solo entrepreneur, as a person that people that I love, come to assist with problem solving. And so, when you're put in the fire, you got to figure out how to become a fire walker. All right, so let's get to it. Now, what I've done is I've chunked this down so that it's easy to remember. There are three steps or stages that you want to go into when you want to problem solve. First and foremost is you want to deal with stabilizing yourself or the person that you're handling. And for the rest of this video, I'm going to just talk about if it's problem solving for you, because a lot of times it's really it's harder to do this when it's yourself than it is for others. Okay, so I'm gonna focus on just mano a mano. So the first stage is you want to stabilize. The next stage is you want to prepare, and the next stage is you want to organize. And I'm looking at my notes just in case. All right, so when you stabilize, what you're going to be doing is you're going to be getting yourself into a situation where you can be more objective. Now, in this area, I always think of King Solomon from the Bible, the wise ruler of Israel, and how he was known for his great divine wisdom. And there is this concept known as Solomon's paradox. And what Solomon's paradox is it is where we can give excellent advice to others, but we have a hard time taking our own advice or even generating advice for ourselves. And so that's the paradox, because in the Bible, they gave examples of how wise this king was, and yet and still he failed miserably when it came to doing things on himself. All right, so one of the things that you want to do is two parts to this stabilization, and I'm taking them from this Solomon's paradox. The first and foremost thing that you want to do is you want to stop and realize that when you have a problem that is stumping you, 9 times out of 10, there's a big old emotional wall that's keeping you from being objective, keeping you blind to the situation and keeping you confused. Okay, and so that's the first and foremost thing. Become aware. And become aware of the emotions. 9 times out of 10, the emotions that are going to be present in a problem or a situation is going to be the presence of fear, and most likely maybe some anger. And when you have those, they will cause you to run about using up energy that's not productive, causing you to do things that are going to make things worse, in the long run. Okay, so the next part is in your emotions. You're going to need to, once you realize that you're having some emotional stuff come into play, you're going to move yourself past emotions. And as I said before, try to figure out the emotions. If I can, I did this a long time ago, so I don't know if I can, but there are 7 major negative emotions that will pop up when you have some problems. And I'll just tell you off the rip, the 2 biggest ones are fear and anger, because they have things in the negative emotions like jealousy, guilt, and those types of things. But if I can, I'll find it. If I can't, just pretend I didn't say it. All right, so this is under getting yourself stabilized. We're going to remember Solomon, the great wise king who even had problems. And what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that we stabilize. We recognize that this is emotional. We're going to do what we can to address the emotions. And then what we're going to do when we're trying to stabilize is we're going to make sure that we become objective and we put some distance between us and the problem. You're going to pretend, if that's the only thing you can do, you're going to pretend that you don't know this person. You're giving this advice to a stranger, and you are a kind stranger offering the most authentically true and right advice to this person. All right. So stabilize. You've dealt with the emotions. You've recognized that the emotions are there, and you have put distance between you and the situation. The next one is going to be to prepare. And that means you're going to prepare your mind. Oh, yes. It is important that we prepare, because the mind that created this problem is not the mind that's going to solve it. And so this is the part where we are going to now transmute from the presentation of the problem into the active solution of the problem. So what do you say? What is the difference between transmute and transform? You might not have asked that, but that's a good question. And it goes into this part where to transform is to take something and upgrade it. To transmute is to take something and turn it into something that it never was. Think about alchemy, the transmutation of lead into gold. Lead was never gold. No matter how you try to dress lead up, it was never going to be gold. But you can transmute the situation and the problem by getting your mind prepared. All right. So these are some of the quick, now this is not exhaustive, but these are some quick things that are going to give you a lot of bang for the buck when you're trying to get your mind prepared to come up with a solution or an answer to your problem. And that is, you're going to take an inventory of your resources. Now, you might say, Michelle, that is just so Captain Obvious, but is it really? And one of the things that you need to be mindful of is when you are in the prep stages, a litmus test that you're really in those stages is that you don't fall back to the low-hanging fruit of what you would habitually and normally do when you're thinking about what resources do I have to solve this problem. I can tell you, a major part of the population, their fallback on their list of inventory of resources is going to be who can help me and what can I return, sell, or get. And sometimes the problem cannot be solved by other people helping with finances, or you can't outsource it to them. You got to go through the problem to the solution. And sometimes what if you don't have any more resources to sell, take back? So that means that your inventory must expand. And I'm going to tell you, one of the fastest ways to expand your ability to see more resources is to understand how people problem solve. And that is, what you want to do is prioritize. One of the things that I find in the problems that I have to solve and the problems of others is identify what's making the most racket or the most noise, what's pressing on you the most, giving you the most stress. Do you know there's a high probability that the loudest, squeakiest wheel on the barrel is not the one that needs to be addressed first? It is amazing to me how we can get so turned around because we haven't addressed the emotions first that we do not prioritize. When we start to figure out what's the biggest bang for the buck, what's going to get me the straightest path to the answer, we start to realize that, oh my gosh, I'm trying to maybe address the wrong problem. I'm trying to allocate resources to the wrong symptom, because prioritizing will not only start to help you to figure out what needs to get addressed first, it's going to help you to understand, am I really even addressing the right problem? So when we do this mind prep, this is where we start to get this wisdom. All right. This part is about revenue management. Now, that's a fancy term that is a corporate term. It's actually where I cut my teeth in my corporate life. And revenue management, aka inventorying your resources, is where you take things that you already have and you search for creative ways to make these things give you more resources or more revenue. Now, remember I said your fallback is who can help me and what can I sell? But now that you're starting to prioritize, you might realize that, oh, Netflix, no, let me get a real one. Oh, Apple is trying to come after me for that money, but you need to pay rent. And Apple might be making, and forgive me, Apple, but I'm just saying Apple might be maybe making the most noise, but it's your rent that needs to be paid, or your mortgage, however you rock. And a lot of times when you don't stop to prepare your mind to get organized, you will just be like, oh, okay, well, here you go, Apple. And I hate to say it, but you probably won't even get a chance to say, here you go, Apple, because Apple's snatching every day, honey. Their snatch game is legendary. Oh my God, when you asleep, Apple is awake. Okay, focus, Michelle, get off that side quest. Okay, let's come back to it. So in preparing your mind, revenue management, start taking inventory of what you have and seeing if there's a new way to use it to get revenue in. Another one is when you're taking inventory, go and start looking. Do you have any, when I call them insurance policies? And what I mean is, do you have things that you bought just in case? Do you have rainy days that you've forgotten about? How many times I was trying to solve a problem and I already had the answer, but because I was still emotionally locked into a urgency that had me running around like a chicken with her head cut off, I missed the fact that I already had the solution in things that, because they were out of sight, they were out of mind, that would have taken care of the problem. Okay. So in this preparatory stance, I want you to make the inventory for your resources. Start to use revenue management of going and looking and not forcing, but willing, by force of will. That's what I'm gonna say. By force of will, getting creative to see, is there another way that I can use what I already have to find a different use for it? You want to transmute the problem where you're turning lead into gold. I have looked at people that do what they call it upscaling of upcycling. Yes, upcycling of things, where they'll take something that they got at Dollar Tree or at a garage sale, and then they upscale it so that it makes so much more money. And this is kind of like an example of revenue management in the wild. And then, like I said before, do you have rainy day stuff? Do you have, because you don't use it all the time? A lot of times it can be in our technological age, it can be apps or it can be access to stuff. And that's another area. What do you have access to? Not necessarily what you possess, but what can you get to? And I did a video where I talked about the power of your network, and I'll put the link up. So I don't know how to do that, y'all, but I'll put the link somewhere. But anyway, I think it's up there. But I talked about the power of networking, and you will find that the network truly is the net worth, because there might be someone in your network, and I might need to just take these off, but there might be someone in your network who has access to something and is willing to allow you to have access to it. You see how that works? And then this is prioritizing. When we talk about prioritizing, one of the things that I want you to realize is that sometimes what you think is a problem is just a prioritizing issue that's out of order. And so I always want you to remember this part when you're in your prepping your mind stage, that there is a place for last minute things. Last. And make them so, unless they are causing you bodily harm or financial ruin or something important. They need to stay last. What's that famous old saying? Oh, your urgency does not mean naturally mean it's my urgency. Remember that. Last things last. All right. And then we have the last part of this. So we've talked about how to get stable. We've talked about how to prepare your mind. And the next part is we want to get in order. This is the part where, unless you have successfully done these first two, you're not going to become a pro at problem solving. This is what separates the adults from the children. And that is to learn how to ask the right questions. How do you learn how to ask the right questions? The fastest way I can tell you to learn is by using the quote unquote Socratic method. And it comes from Socrates. It's where you interview yourself. Yes. And it sounds fancy, but do you know all you do is you can ask yourself one of the 5 biggest codes to figuring out stuff. And that's going to be why, what, who, when, or how. And once you ask that, depending on what it is, like, what do I need to do to blah, 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 blah? When do I need to start blah, blah, blah? When do I need to end blah, blah, blah? Whatever it is, how do I need to? What, why, where? After you do that and you start that question and like I said, please write this stuff down and you start that question. Guess what else you're going to do? You're going to say, and then what? And then what? And then how? And then when? And it's going to look like some kind of magic that you're working, because you're going to start getting the insights on what you need to do. That's how you're going to start to get organized. And then this is the last point I want to make, and that is you want to use these 3 things. Now, there's this book called How to Read Literature Like a Professor. And that book has been a life changer for me, because it's not just about reading books. It's about life applications of learning. And in this book, the author talks about 3 things that he used to understand literature and what's really being said. And you're going to use these 3 things to really put a framework, a boundary, and a process, a workflow, if you will, on the problem. And that is to look for the patterns, the symbols, and the metaphors. Okay? So patterns. What is recurring? When you're looking for patterns are going to be, and I should not have taken my glasses off because y'all, I can't see this, but patterns are going to be where you start to learn and unlock the sequence. Then you want to look for symbols. Symbols are going to be a replica or a representation of the code you need to solve the problem. And then metaphors. Metaphors are where you take something you know and put it onto something that you don't know, or something that you're trying to get an understanding for, but because it's using something you know, it's a way to make the unknown easier to understand. And so the metaphor is going to help you to understand what the sequence is and what the code of the sequence is. And so that is how you start to develop the way of being organized. And I'm going to say this, once you go through the Socratic method, once you go through patterns and symbols and metaphors, it's going to start to expose things that you never would have if you didn't use this process. It's going to expose assumptions, false assumptions that you've made, and it's going to expose, let's just look at my notes, sorry. It's going to expose false assumptions. It's going to expose gaps in knowledge. It's going to expose the context that the problem needs to be solved in, and it's going to expose the nuances that will help you to tweak what you need to, instead of having to build something up. It's going to, provide you with shortcuts. So I don't want to make this too long, but I'm just going to hit those really quickly. And that is when you're looking at assumptions. A lot of times assumptions will make you misclassify the problem. And I've talked about the different types of problems where you have the obvious problem, complicated, complex, and the chaotic. You can go and see another video that I did on that training. You're also, like I said before, going to experience and see gaps in knowledge and that you would have never seen. Because going through this process is going to let you know that, oh, I might be missing this component or that component. And then you're going to be able to start to understand the context that the problem needs to be in. Because a problem with the wrong context makes more problems, because you're not solving the actual problem. You might be addressing a symptom, and you might be addressing even that symptom the wrong way. All right. So then you have the nuance. And nuance is something that is really advanced because it's subtle. And nuance is the way pros problem solve, because pros understand that everything does not require a battering ram. Sometimes, and a lot of times, problems require what is called a feather touch. And I'll put the name of the German term that is used for feather touch so that you can see it. And the reason why is because every problem does not need you to reinvent a solution. Sometimes a problem requires a tweak that's just been waiting for you to figure it out so that everything becomes right as rain. And so with that, this is how you become a pro problem solver. So guess what, y'all? Because my lighting is basically gone. I hope y'all can still see me. This has been Michelle, your big sis, with Brilliant Quest. Thank you so much. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and comment. I thank you guys, everybody rocking with me. I'll see you soon. Bye.